Well, first thing I want to ask, I know many of you on this training, but Elizabeth, is yours more technical or admin or
For
education?
this group, there is I would say this group tends to be more technical, but there are a couple of folks in here that also do admin and or education.
Right. I know Catherine does education, but it looks like most everybody's more on the technical side. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the technical side.
No, and I think that
So,
makes sense. Yes.
so the first thing I want to talk about is my title of mine is preparing for board meetings. So there's going to be a little bit of an overlap between what Elise said and what I'm going to say, but it's a little bit different angle. So don't feel like you've already heard this before. So it'll be a little bit more input. But so one of the things I wanted to show you is this is our website, and I'll have my link whenever Brandy sends out the information we're providing that you can get to this. But this has a lot of good information. I refer you to our website on many different aspects. But for this preparation for district board meetings, you want to make sure you post it. That's already been talked about. Check with supervisors and the staff for agenda items. That's important. Send your board meeting packets to supervisors and interested parties. Contact supervisors and interested parties with meeting reminders as appropriate. A lot of boards would like to get an email or a phone call the day before or the day of a board meeting. There's been many times I went to a board meeting and someone forgot and they'd call and they'd say, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I forgot, that kind of thing. So one good way to prepare for the meeting is make sure everyone who is coming to the meeting or invited to your board meeting that they have been contacted. And bring your supervisor travel vouchers to that meeting and have them prepared so that you can go ahead and complete them there and get your signatures. And then after the meeting, a checklist is your minutes and upload approved minutes to your SharePoint. And as most of you know, that's important because you can't get your master agreement and all that approved until everything's updated. So on SharePoint. So just wanted to make sure you knew about that. But also on this website, you can see some of the open meetings requirements, Robert's Rules of Order. Most boards follow Robert's Rules of Order, but there's links that you can actually click on and some cheat sheets and that kind of thing. So the next thing I want you to know, my presentation isn't as pretty as what Brandy and Elise did. I'm pretty good on PowerPoint, but I really didn't have the time to do some real pretty PowerPoint slides. But I want to kind of refer back to this agenda. So one of the first things in preparation for your board, and some districts do this and some do not, but it's really good to have like a 3-ring binder. You create some kind of folder that you can put all the information in. For example, here you can have in this 3-ring binder for every meeting, you'll have the chapter 139, article 1. And I have a copy of that. I carry this around with me all the time because you never know when you might need it. I'll enlarge it just a little bit, but this is just one side of it's a laminated sheet that I carry in my files with me in my pack. But if you had this in that 3-ring binder and a question comes up during a meeting, you can refer back to what the general statute is, General Statute 139, Article 1. Now, this is just a 1-page. This document is very lengthy. You can put the entire packet if you want, but at a minimum, I'd recommend that you at least have this in there so that you can refer back to this as needed during a board meeting. Also, a procedure for closed session, which Elise did really well on that. But we have a little cheat sheet that I provide to my districts, and I think most coordinators have it, but Elise informed me she did not have this. So I'm going to get this to her, and I'm sure Taryn doesn't have it either, but I have sent this out to my districts. And if you have this in your 3-ring binder, it talks about open and closed meetings, what the procedures are. And here is where we were talking about the different reasons to go in. There's really only 2 that impact soil and water districts. One is the personnel issues, and another is the confidential records, which we have talked pretty extensive, but I'm going to even hit on this a little bit later on in my presentation. And it even has an example of what the statement. So a statement must be read by the chair before going into closed session. A motion has been, this is just an example, a motion has been made to go into closed session. The board has a right to go into closed session based on General Statute 143-318.11 and then state the purpose. If it's for confidential records, state the law or the statute that makes them confidential, and that's General Statute 139-8.2. And if it's for personnel reasons, just make a statement that we're going into closed session for personnel. And then the chair would announce who stays in that meeting and who should not. And then the closed session required even if no public is present at the meeting. I get that a lot. People asking, well, there's really no public there. Should we go in closed session anyway? You should, because you're going to be discussing and you're going to be taking minutes that's separate from your regular meeting. And then records of closed session requires a general account of subjects discussed. And if you have any questions on this, really contact your coordinator. And a lot of times we are at these meetings where we can actually answer these questions. But most people just keep general minutes of a closed session. For example, board went into closed session to discuss personnel issues. And that may have been all you did, and that's all you really need to put. You can actually put that in your regular minutes so that your next board meeting, you'll approve your minutes. That also includes the statement that you went in closed session. If you have a lot of detail, technically you're supposed to approve those minutes that were in closed session at an open public meeting. And how do you do that when it's closed session minutes? So you only give them to the board members who were present and then you vote on it. But the simplest thing is to put it into your general minutes with a simple statement. We went in closed session for personnel issue. And then once they approve their minutes, they're also approving those closed session. So that's just a little tidbit that what I try to tell my districts. But this is a real good cheat sheet that if you had it in your 3-ring binder, you can refer to it. You may not know you're going to go in closed session until the day of the meeting or even during the meeting itself. Also in that 3-ring binder, you'd have your previous meeting minutes and then other pertinent information. And some people don't use 3-ring binders. They just have a folder. A lot of districts even keep their previous minutes for several meetings past. Some even keep them up to a year, and then they re-update the 3-ring binder at the end of the year. You never know when questions may come up. Hey, we met 3 months ago and we discussed this, but I don't remember exactly what was said. You have it right there in front of you. So I think it's really good to create this folder and have that information available when needed. The next important thing is your agenda. You need to have the conflict of interest disclosure statement on that agenda, the statement of professionalism, and a little bit about that. The conflict of interest has been on there as long as I can remember, because you don't want to have a conflict if you're voting if a member is voting on something that maybe their contract or a relative's contract. You don't want to have that conflict. So you need to make an announcement at the beginning of the meeting. Hey, I have a conflict with item A. That's so-and-so, a relative of mine. I'm going to recuse myself during that vote. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And you need to have on there approval of the agenda, approval of the previous minutes. Also have a public comment section there. So we actually have at the website I was at earlier, this is on there. This is an example, call it the Sandy Bottom Soil and Water Conservation District agenda. And as you can see, it has those statements at the top. In the interest of preserving public confidence in the actions of this board, the chair reminds members of their duty to avoid any conflicts. So the question comes up, how do I know if I have a conflict? You need to have something down here, maybe the contract number and even the person's name. They would know based on what they're seeing here that they would have a conflict. But also tell the district they need to remind the board if they know something's coming up in the agenda in that meeting that would be a conflict for them, you need to announce it here so they can announce, hey, I'm going to, when I get down to item 5C, I'm going to abstain because that contract is a relative. So just want to make that's important. This statement here, supervisors are reminded of their responsibility to uphold the laws of the United States, North Carolina, and their Constitution. Business is to be conducted in a professional manner. This is relatively new. This has only been added in the last few years because we had some districts that had some board members that were not treating their staff appropriately. Also, we had some board members who were attending public meetings and discussing things in public meetings. For example, they may be saying, the Soil and Water Board supports this. And technically, the board did not give them that authority to go to a public meeting and say that because they don't support it. So that's why this statement was put in there, because there's just been a few conflicts that has arisen over the years. But these are the more precise items that you should have in that agenda: call to order, welcome introduction. This is another thing I've noticed a lot. They may have visitors and they never recognize those visitors. You really need to recognize who's in that meeting room and do some introductions there. I've sat through meetings and somebody come in I didn't know and didn't find out till the meeting was over and just got to talking with them. So those are things that needs to be done. Approval of the agenda, approval of the minutes previous. And then you start getting into your information items, your action items. This is where your contracts and things would be. And then a conclusion, board member comments, remarks by the chair, then the next board meeting. So we'll go back to our agenda again. Open or closed meetings. So we have discussed that a lot, and I'm going to hit on that a little bit more towards the end of my presentation. We got a little quiz I want to give you, so we'll hit a little bit more on that. Be prepared to back up info presented. You got to make sure it's in a timely manner. For example, we have ranking forms that have to go into our strategic plan, and those have to be completed before June the 1st. So you don't want to wait till June to bring this to the board. You want several months ahead to talk about these things so that you can iron all the details out and be ready to submit your strategic plan. So many things have a time frame, and you need to make sure it's on the agenda at the right meeting. Explain changes in a clear and concise way. Be open to your board. Explain why you're wanting to make a change. Give an example. Bring those examples to the meetings. And it may be an example is from another district of something they did that you'd like to see your district do. Or maybe it's pictures of a BMP or a natural resource concern that you want to show the board. So those are important things. You need to help the board understand why you're presenting something. For example, the ranking form that I mentioned earlier. Anticipate questions that may come up. If your board is really active, they're going to question things that you do or why you did something. So be prepared. Anticipate resistance. I have presented things to the board and they didn't like it. So I would have to explain a little bit more in detail of why I did what I did, why I'm wanting to make a change. So those are important. Keep the discussion ongoing. So I'm going to go back to our link again. Get this a little bit more on the technical side. But here's some examples of the agenda. That's the one I just did, the sandy bottom. There's example meeting minutes there. But here I want to hit on this one. Suggested protocol for district technician to present cost share items to the board.
Hey, Rick, just one
Yes.
second. I think we're still on your slide. So maybe
Okay.
stop share and then try to reshare your
Okay, don't know what happened there then, but let me pull it back up again. And I think I may have it open.
I don't think that was just me. I'm hoping that it was everybody. It was still just showing.
While Rick's working on that, I thought I had when you were talking about agendas, Rick. I had a situation where I was at a board meeting and something was was recorded in the minutes that we would address it at the next board meeting. Well, then I wasn't at the next board meeting. But then I went to the following board meeting, and at that point I read the past meetings minutes and realized that that thing that we said we were going to discuss never happened. And the reason for that was because the person that made the agenda did not build the agenda off of the previous meeting's minutes. So that little piece got missed. They just used their agenda template rather than looking at the meeting minutes and saying, oh yeah, this is a piece that we're carrying over and we're going to address it at the next meeting. So that's why when I said earlier, build your meeting agenda off of the previous meeting's minutes, it's for that kind of thing, because otherwise, we can't all remember these things. But if you're looking at your minutes, you can know, oh yeah, that's something that we need to talk about again.
Correct. So are you seeing this slide now? It says draft.
No.
No, we still see the meeting preparation agenda.
Okay, I don't know what's happening.
Is it in your PowerPoint or is it on a website?
I'm on the website.
Well, do you want to put the link in the chat and I can pull it up and you can talk through it?
Yeah, it's the same one that you sent me, the link that you sent last Friday, I think it was. It's that
Oh,
website.
the one that's on the training page?
Yes.
Oh, yes. And while I'm doing that, Rick, there is a couple of questions in the chat. Would you or Elise look at those at the bottom? It looks like they're from Catherine. They're the last couple questions.
Yeah, I can't see the chat because I'm presenting, so I have to come out.
Elise, will you state those?
So the question I see is the agenda is to state contracts to be discussed, and yes, if you're going to discuss contracts, you should have that on there, the name of the contract and the contract number. That way, if a supervisor sees that and they have a conflict of interest, they can state that I will abstain from any voting regarding this one because I have some interest or whatever.
Right.
And then chair is to lead the meeting, or district director. The chair leads the meeting. The chair of the board leads the meeting. But they may call on, it's somewhere in your agenda, it'll probably have a place for your director to speak about things that they want to present. Does that answer your questions, Catherine?
So Brandy, if you'll page down right there, suggested protocol for district technician to present cost share. And you'll need to enlarge it. So these are just a list of things. And at the meeting, you'll see there, number one is share updates, outreach program, marketing, share your training, and then go down to 4, present applications for approval. So this gives you a list. Consider batching periods for applications or only moving to contract with applications that receive set ranking. Be mindful of sharing protected information. We've been talking a lot about that. And then A under that's disclose any conflicts of interest that may exist with staff or supervisors. So this is where the technician would need to, at the beginning of the meeting, state, hey, item such and such is a conflict with so-and-so on the board. You'll need to abstain because they may not know that you're presenting that contract. Talk about your ranking forms when you present a contract, show how they rank out compared to others. And you may even want to share the BMP policy, whether it's the ag cost share BMP policy or it's an NRCS policy that we're following. And you may even want to let the board know that you have job approval authority or you do not have job approval authority, and who does, who would be signing off on this. And then generic discussion of the resource concern. And you can have photos, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in my presentation. Present contracts for approval. Just know that you have to do your applications and your contracts separate in a vote. So you'll bring forth the application, board to vote on it. You can do it at the same meeting. Most cases, boards or staff will bring the application to one meeting, and then the next meeting they'll bring the contract. But you do have to have separate votes for those two procedures. And I'm not going to read through everything. You can go to the website and look at this. Then you present your request for payments. One of the things that I've noticed there is your board has assigned someone to sign requests for payments, because we don't want to hold up landowners getting their money. So as soon as you get a request for payment, you can have that board member sign, whoever's been given that authority. They can sign it outside the board meeting. But what you need to remember is when you come to the board meeting, if it was signed outside the board meeting previously by a board member, you do not vote on it again, because technically the board voted on who signs that, and they did it as their duty outside the board meeting. If you bring the request for payment to the board meeting and it has not been signed, you'll need to discuss that and then have a motion to approve that. So that's two differences on your request for payment. And if you want to go in closed session to talk in more detail about the contract or the application or even the request for payment, you'll need to go in closed session if you're going to disclose the designs and that kind of thing. Conservation easement projects participants are encouraged to provide voluntary release of program information. So some districts do hold easements, and they just need to make sure it's okay to share some information related to conservation easements during a board meeting, or if you have to go in closed session. So that's pretty much it on that. So let me, if you'll stop sharing, let me go back to my PowerPoint.
So Catherine, to answer your question, is this a draft at a resource tab of district info webpage? I know I pulled that link from the division website some time ago. But yes, but that website that you might have briefly saw before that was on the training website, and it hasn't actually been launched yet, that resource. So I will launch that at the conclusion and send you the link. I was just trying to compile some of the information that felt like it was in several different places that I felt like went around the topic of preparing for board meetings. So same information, maybe in a slightly different place.
So now we're going to get in more into participation from you. So I have an example here of a board meeting agenda. It's called the blank Soil and Water Conservation District. It has the date. There it says chairman. Does any member of this board have a conflict? So what's y'all's opinion on this agenda? Anyone can speak up or make a comment in the chat, but someone's going to have to tell me what that comment was. What do you see wrong with this agenda?
Catherine says, need the full conflict of interest statement listed on the agenda.
Correct. It's not on there. What else?
Feel free to come off mute, turn your camera on. I know we only have a little bit left, so we would love to chit chat with you guys about this.
It's called interaction. So
the agenda is not very detailed.
Correct. All it says, it talks about the order, approval minutes, then it just says information on the agenda. NRCS, what? District updates, education update. You need to have a little bit of details there. So that's good. This is the full agenda. And this is actually an agenda that I received.
Sydney says needs approval of agenda.
Correct.
And then action items should show more tent information, more
Yeah, what they're going to talk about, soil tent
intentional
purchase.
information. Yeah.
So you can continue to comment or send things on chat if you like, but here this is and I do pick on Lincoln a lot because that is my district, my county I live in. So this is their agenda. So they have the call to order. They do have the talking about a conflict of interest statement in there. Now, some districts, just about every district has this statement, but some district boards do not put this statement in on their agenda, but they adopted it and they'll have it on the wall in where they hold their meeting, or they may have it in that 3-ring binder and they'll just refer back and say, make sure you go back and you read your ethics of this board. So you do not actually have to have it on the agenda, but I highly recommend it. Then you have your adoption of the agenda, public comments. Some boards have a session where the public can come in and speak. They give them 3 minutes. I have had that to occur a couple of times at some boards. So they do need to hold them to the time limit. Approval of previous minutes, NRCS report, and here they even have the person's name, which is really good. Then the division report. This is Natural Resource Division report, not the Division of Soil and Water. So Lincoln does do erosion control, and Danielle is over that section. So she gives a report on erosion control. They talked about the EVAD and the VAD. They're actually going through now, changing that, going to readopt through the county. So Evan Crawley is the director. Then the cost share program report. She didn't really have much to report there, but typically you'd have your contracts, applications, all that underneath here. District budget report, talking about the no-till drill. Most every district has a no-till drill or some kind of equipment. So you need to give updates on that, repairs, that kind of thing. They do conservation easements in Lincoln. So they do talk about, and they even have the names. They don't really go into some of the maps and photographs and that kind of thing, but they do talk a lot about those easements, what steps they're at now. And then the division report. We as coordinators, I like to be at the end because things may come up prior to our session that we can address when we get down to here. And then other business is usually the last, and then talking about signature pages and that kind of thing. Area meetings, what all may be coming up. So that's a good example of how an agenda should look. Not that it's perfect, but it's a lot better than the previous one that I showed you.
We do have a question, Rick, from the chat. Does it need to have who is giving the information or update on the agenda? Does it need to have the person's name?
It would be good to have the name. I don't guess you really have to have it, but I like to see names because I'm still learning some names, and NRCS has new staff come on, and I'm still trying to learn who they are. So it's good. It's good information for me too, and as coordinators. And then you got Taryn, who's really new. She's still learning staff and boards names and that kind of thing. So anything that can help us, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think it's also so important because I mean, if you have a public comments or people that are viewing, then they can get to know who the people are in the board meetings and providing the updates, as well as that resource for the minutes, right? You have that additional sort of checks and balances that you don't forget to state the person's name appropriately.
Right. And I was going to mention that if you have public there, they need to know who's speaking. Anything else in the chat?
That is it for the time being.
Okay, so now I have an aerial photograph. Is everybody seeing this?
Yes.
So if you as a technical person wanted to present this as a board, would you put this up in the room and show the board? It's called interaction time.
No.
Look, we have some no's.
So why?
It's showing exactly where the BMP would be.
That's right. So they've outlined the farm and you can actually see road names. I think this is a GIS. No, this is not. This is USDA. It has, well, I'm not going to say anything else. Anything else you notice?
Some people in the chat put the farm tract information and the field and tract information.
Right, correct. You're not supposed to disclose that. Not even the field number. Now, if you gave it a field number, that's fine, but you cannot use the USDA field number, parcel number, or a tract number or farm number. Parcel number isn't public information. That's on your county GIS. So if you did a GIS and it had the parcel number, that's fine, because that's any public can get that on their website. But this does have the road name, so you possibly could identify where this farm is located. So I would not show this in a public meeting. You would go into closed session, and you could do this in closed session. One other point about closed session. So in preparation for your board meeting, if you know NRCS is going to provide information, needs to go in closed session, and you as a technical person are going to provide information that needs to go in closed session, you can do that all in one closed session. I've been in board meetings where they went in closed session for the ag cost share information. Then they got down to the NRCS and said, oh, we got to go back in closed session again. So then they have to go through the procedure again. So there's where prepping is really important. Make sure you have contact with your NRCS staff too. That's just a little side note.
I have a side question for you. Is there a way that you can provide your board with information that they might need to know that might contain sensitive information without going into closed session?
That's a good question, because it's came up. If you provide a packet, is that packet public information? And I don't have a good answer for that.
Gotcha.
And if you send them something by email, a lot of times emails are public information, unless you did provide tract number, farm numbers, that kind of thing. Then you would really need to work with, go back to your ordinance. If you passed an ordinance on what you can disclose, go back to your county, and you may want to even contact NRCS, or, you know, at least contact us as a coordinator. I've had many times people contact me and I didn't know the answer, but I'd get an answer for them.
Yes. And we have one more question. Catherine, I'm going to come back to your other question at the end of this, but one of the questions Catherine had was, so just confirming the agenda needs to identify closed session topics up front.
Doesn't necessarily have to. If you know you're going to go in closed session, you can put on the agenda you're going to go in closed session. But many times they don't know they're going to go in closed session until they get to the meeting and something comes up. So you do not have to post it in your agenda.
But if you have an idea that something might come up, there might be a good spot to reference it, just so that you're prepared on the front end before that situation comes up.
Correct. So I know I'm getting pretty close on time. So here's another aerial. Is this a good one to, can you put this one up in a board meeting?
We have a yes. Another yes.
So it sounds like yes. This one's questionable. It does not have any identifying marks on it. It does have a road. And if you have someone who's really good at looking aerial photographs in general public, they could probably pick out where this is at. So this is a maybe. I probably would not disclose this in an open meeting, just because you possibly could pull out where it's located. There's no identification of what the BMP is or where it's at or anything like that. So this is one of those, you're going to realize with our job, there are some gray areas and you're going to have to make a decision, but have something to back it up.
Right. Yeah. We also have some other, some people said, you know, maybe yes, because it's from GIS. One person said they wouldn't. Someone asked, how do you eradicate the roads? And then someone else mentioned, don't show maps, question mark.
So I'll show you how to to solve this one. It's coming up. But I would say this is a maybe, and it's, like I said, it's a gray area. You just have to make a call. I personally would not put this one in public.
I was gonna say that normally I don't show maps because everybody in my county knows everybody and where they live and everything. So we usually try not to show a map like that.
Right. So does everybody see this? This is a zoom in on a GIS map. And what we have here is a drainage issue. It's actually creating a small gully. And then here it's even more definitive that it's washing. If you are good at looking at aerial maps, you can detect this. And it's actually draining into a small pond here. This eliminates the roads. There is a road up here in the corner, but I zoomed in enough. This is actually a site that I've been to. And so I zoomed in enough that you cannot identify where this is at. And this is good to show your board. It shows exactly what you're dealing with. So this is something you can do just to zoom into these aerials and show your board. So now we're going to have a few questions. Quiz. Question comes up about NRCS staffing within the district office. The board wants to talk about NRCS personnel issues. Can the district go into closed session? Yes or no?
Catherine says no because it's another agency.
Anyone
I was
else?
gonna say yes. You can.
Okay, I have a yes and a no. So we're 50-50.
We have
We
another
say
yes.
yes over here.
Yes and Nash.
Okay, so the answer is no. You do not have any control. And if you go back to that cheat sheet that I said you should put in your 3-ring binder, it says that you can go in closed session to deal with personnel issues. It's only personnel you have control over, though. It would be your staff, not any other agency. This one actually happened in a board meeting that I was at. And so we're there to give them guidance. So we have to speak up as coordinator and say, well, wait a minute, we can't go in closed session here. But the answer here is no. I like y'all's thinking. I like your participation. Board wants to talk about appointment of a vacant board seat. So one of your boards has resigned, board members. Does this require a closed session?
We have a no. We have I want to say no because they are elected or appointed officials.
I am unsure, but I would probably say no until otherwise.
Okay, so you're correct.
Another no.
It is no. This is another scenario that actually took place a few years back. The board had a vacancy. They went in closed session. They actually had some like applications. They reviewed the applications and made a selection in a closed meeting. But then, so what you do, this question came up when Elise was speaking. So if you have a vacancy on your board, you cannot go in closed session. You have to discuss this in open meeting. You can review applications, discussions, but all that has to be in open, and you make a selection. And there's a form you fill out, you send to the Commission of Soil and Water, and then the Commission of Soil and Water actually appoints the vacant seat. When the Commission of Soil and Water found out that this procedure was done in closed session, our legal counsel said, okay, we can't take your recommendation. Now the Commission of Soil and Water requests that you send those applicants to them, and the Board of Commission reviewed those applications and made an appointment at their board meeting. But all of you said no, so you do not go in closed session.
Good job, team.
It's time for the district board to complete the district director's annual evaluation. Can the board go into closed session for this?
Yes.
Have a yes.
We have another yes.
I would think yes, because it is personnel, district personnel.
Okay, so you're all correct. When you're doing, and I do want to make a side note here. I have noticed in some of the boards I covered, they do not do an annual evaluation of their staff. In some cases, the district director will do the annual evaluation of the employees, and then the board does the director's position. That's what I recommend. I highly recommend that boards do an annual evaluation. It may not mean you get a raise if you did good in the last 12 months, but at least you as an employee will know areas that you do real well in, and then areas that maybe you need to improve. And it also keeps the board on their toes as to what you're doing. So you're going to be discussing things that you do not want the general public to know. This is your staff. This is a personnel issue. So you do go in closed session and discuss this. Y'all did real good.
Wonderful. And I'll
Okay.
come back. We have a question, but it's 2 slides ago. So just know you have a
Okay.
couple questions at the end there, Rick.
I think this is my last one.
Okay.
The district technical representative is working on a strategic plan for the agricultural cost share program. He is planning to bring to the district board in their June board meeting. Is this presented in open session or closed?
I would think open.
I have an open.
Open. And then
Okay.
Catherine, once she mentioned strategic plan revolves around public identified needs.
Right. So it is public. You have to do this in public, open meeting. What else
I would
is wrong
also
with
say
this?
it's coming in too late.
Okay, that was my next question. What's wrong? Else is wrong? This was to be presented at their June board meeting. So I gave y'all a hint. If you paid a lot of attention to me earlier, I actually used this as an example on a ranking form. Your strategic plan has to be turned in June. So you can't take this to your board in June. You need to bring this in March or April. So that, because you may be having to make changes based on what the board wants to do with the strategic plan. So this is where timing is important. You need to plan ahead.
Yeah,
just a little.
Some of our newer employees, we will be doing a training session on the strategic plan. I think it might even be next month.
So just a little comment about strategic plans. As you're doing things through the year, your technical staff, if you come up on something that you see maybe your ranking form is not addressing, make a note of it. It's hard to remember something that you did in August when it comes around to March. So make little notes like that. That maybe you've seen, or maybe it's a priority you've been noticing out in the field that your board's priorities are not in line with what you're seeing. So just make little notes of that through the year and try to remember to bring that back when you start working on your strategic plan.
We do have a question regarding strategic plans in the chat. Is a strategic plan an annual development or a 5-year development?
Annual. It's related to your ag cost share. It's how you ask how much money you want to ask for each year. So you have to do your strategic plan every year.
And with that context, that is the name of this document it's referred to as a strategic plan. But can your district have a separate 5-year strategy plan where you are, planning and doing things? The answer would be yes. That's just not the document we're referring to in this situation.
Right. So we were required to have a longer range plan, and it was a 5-year. You would readdress that every 5 years because things change in your district. But look at what happened with Helene in the mountain region. Do you think their priorities have changed just in the last few months? They have. So their strategic plan or their long range plan should change, and definitely their strategic plan. Some districts don't do that long range plan any longer, but I encourage it, and some districts do it. So I do encourage to have a long range plan.
Yeah, and we do have a comment. AgRap doesn't have the strategic plan, but Lindsay mentioned that AgRap is included in the strategic plan. So yes, this is how allocations and requests are made for those allocations. So it wraps in all your funding requests.
Correct.
Okay, I have a couple other questions for you. If you have any to wrap up, friends, put a couple more in there. We're just going to take another minute or two. Rick, do the minutes get sent, meeting minutes get sent to division headquarters?
Yes, they have to be downloaded into SharePoint.
Perfect. And when discussing the vacant seat in this situation, it was for the board member scenario that we were talking about. What personnel or confidential information are you trying to avoid discussing within the open meetings on applications? I guess they're asking maybe why that scenario happened. Why did they feel it necessary to go into closed session?
Well, you don't have to if you're just reviewing applications. That's what the question was, right? Applications.
For the board
position.
members, yeah.
Oh, for the
so
board
I think
member.
I think they're wondering why, like what confidential information does the board member applications for those appointments have on it that people would think. Is that correct, Taryn? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Can you hear me? I'm
Yes.
mostly asking, thank you. I'm mostly asking if I've never seen an application for a vacant board position. So if there's any confidential information on that, are you avoiding it, or there's no confidential information that you would need to avoid in that open session when you're discussing who you want to fill that position in the open meeting?
Well, for example, you could have someone who's running for a seat that may be holding another position, but they do not want those individuals to know at that point. So that's something that you probably wouldn't want to discuss, but you still can't go into closed session because you're discussing on appointing someone to a seat, elected or appointed
Okay, that
seat.
makes sense.
Yeah, and I don't think,
Okay.
Taryn, as far as my knowledge, there's no information that would be considered not public information, given the stature of the elected or appointed situation. But it's pretty, I don't think there's anything that would really be considered confidential.
Yeah, most boards,
Makes
they're
sense.
not going to go through an application process, but I do have one district, they do. They have so many people who want to sit on the board. They want to really go through thoroughly and get their background, what's their expertise, are they a farmer or not. There is a guidance that the division provides when you're selecting a seat, and it's actually the application that's sent in to the commission. So you really refer back to that on some of the questions you ask about the individual. And this same board, they have the individuals come to a board meeting and they'll ask them questions.
That makes sense. Okay.
And we do have one more question. If the district is affiliated with, actually, we might have two more questions. So briefest answer you can possibly give for these, Rick. If we are affiliated with the county and have an annual evaluation with them, do we still need to have an annual evaluation with the board members?
I would say no, but I would share that evaluation with the board that you did for the county. Put it in your 3-ring binder that you provide.
And then one other question, how do political affiliations work? I know the board is supposed to be non-political, so would that be private information that you wouldn't discuss?
Yeah, it's a nonpartisan position, so it should not be discussed. There was actually a legislation proposed bill that would make these seats political, but it got pushed to the side. It never did come to a vote to the general public, but a lot of people oppose that. I oppose it. It doesn't matter who you affiliate with. We don't make decisions from a board standpoint that impacts political things. You're making decisions that impact an individual landowner, and it doesn't matter what their politics are either.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Shannon? Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Rick and Elise, for those presentations and those questions and scenarios. I do think having those critical thinking abilities and skills to think through some of these complex topics are really helpful. And I hope that you all found those helpful as well. So this concludes this training. I will be sending you that orientation packet, and I will follow up with the slide deck and some different links and resources. So keep an eye out for your email. I will try to get that out to you at latest by tomorrow, but I will definitely get it out to you this week. So thank you all for joining in, and we will be in touch. And yeah, have a great rest of your Monday.